So my name is Robert J. Miller, and I've been in the e-commerce and the online marketing space for probably 4 to 5 years now. I used to have multiple agencies. I still have multiple businesses now, mostly in e-commerce and wholesale. And then we have a hedge fund as well. So given that we had a lot of different things going on, we constantly were like rebuilding a bunch of tech, and it was kind of annoying. So when we were looking for different solutions, that's how we came across Aaron, which I had met in person. In Miami, actually at a couple events and seen what he's been able to do. So once we got a little bit more connected, that's how we essentially started to look into sales momentum, look into a HubSpot migration, and look into the whole project. So I was the marketer by heart, still am, still great with marketing. So I've always loved HubSpot. And at my prior companies, I had a combat with my sales manager at the time who wanted to use a different tech stack versus what HubSpot had to provide. So I was very knowledgeable in HubSpot, but if your sales reps don't want to use what you're building over there, then A, it's not built the right way, but then B, let the money flow in easier. So we switched the tech stack to be more with close and, heavier on the operational side, but just easier and more friendly for the sales reps at the time until the point it started to hurt. And the functionality that we couldn't get, the trade-off was just actually costing us more by not switching over back to HubSpot. So I've been experienced in alt tech, and it's just been way easier to have it all in one platform. The biggest pain point that we had, I mean, the trade-offs that you make by having a wider tech stack versus an all-in-one integrated tech stack is the talent and the labor that goes into maintaining. And the problem is when you, or at least if you're like me, I'm pretty system savvy. Like I understand tech and all that stuff very, very well, but I never want to stay there. And even if you hire an ops person who's great at that, usually the speed of which that things need to be resolved will burn out any individual contributor, whether they're overseas or whether even they're here domestic. It will burn out that individual to constantly be fixing the same problems as other platforms, change the way that they interface with each other. Another thing is like some platforms will say that they integrate directly, but the trade-off of that direct integration is a bunch of the reporting that you're pulling out of it. So every single new tool that we wanted to integrate, sure, it might have been easy to switch out like a calendar system, for example, on the front of the lander, but the overhaul on the back end was so deep over and over and over. And if you miss like two or three steps in the Zap, you miss key function data that then is, yeah, a layer of another set of reporting that has to be maintained through a different software. So it just became too complicated to maintain. Not just too complicated to maintain, but when we would actually run with our ops team, I trained my ops manager to manage it all because I sort of built most of it and then he took the baton from there. We would have turnover on the IC side, the individual contributor side, because once they understood, the apps that we were building, the maintenance that was needed there, again, they just lived in the Zapier workspace. And Zapier is great, Make is great, but even then we had makes and we had Zapiers and we had different things performing all these different functions, and so again, it just got too wide. And then the cost of actually keeping that alive and maintaining it, like I'm not going to go fix all that. I'm way further ahead in my vision for the company, where we need to go, et cetera. So the even finding the talent that can specifically operate within the ecosystem that we have was very dynamic given the amount of tech that we kept layering on top. So there were some issues, obviously, people coming in as integrators or as API specialists, they'll click the wrong button and it'll mess up the entire Slack channel, or it'll mess up, something that was unintentional. So the cost of having to have someone have perfect execution, that's a higher cost than what you're paying the person and a higher cost than just switching the software, in my opinion. We were there, man. We were pushing, I mean, we were still pushing, multiple seven figures per year, going on 8 figures per year with this not broken ecosystem. It was just well crafted and jerry rigged together in a lot of ways. And a lot of the all-in-one solutions, if you go downstream for other softwares, which I've been public that I don't like, you lose a lot of the functionalities for reporting and you lose that stuff. So, when you look at upgrading into something like a HubSpot or anything bigger, you just have to have people that can act at the same speed if you're pulling all those old systems out and putting new ones in. There's 3 points. One, we met in a person, I think it was about a year ago around that time. It was a brief sort of dinner, like we were kind of all together, et cetera. But the ideas of being like floated out there of, hey, maybe you should consolidate to HubSpot and maybe you should consider this with the different offers that you have. So I said, okay. Then took a little bit of a deep dive on my own. I'm like, all right, I can probably figure this out. I worked with HubSpot, had that, prior experience in doing so. So I was like, I know I can do it from a tech perspective. That wasn't really the value add or the sell. The other side that I had to really overcome was making sure that my sales team would be bought in if we made it very simple. Because I already had my own trauma with just trying to get my team to migrate and switch over, and I didn't want to go through that again. From a service providing standpoint, the other side, which I'll tell you kind of the research journey there, is everything comes down to execution risk in business with any service provider. And some service providers don't really understand the full scope or the full implications of rolling out ops, sales, and what that implies into marketing on the changes that happen there with conversion rates and those kind of things. Most just stay in one little specific niche. So a lot of people will say, I can just do automations. Well, great, but how do these automations help with the sales process to do XYZ function to alleviate the time to actually be able to help them close more? They just stay in their lane. And so that is where you have to sniff out a lot of the vendors that claim that they can do something. So I think it was around March. I had said, screw our email provider. We're switching over to HubSpot. I know I gotta do this bit by bit if I'm gonna do it myself with my ops team. And then that's when I started going down the rabbit hole of your YouTube videos. And I always knew that there was a problem with getting the marketing integrated into setting and sales feedback. We were looking at it from a linear perspective and all of our capabilities with what our softwares could do. So there wasn't that tie-in. So I knew that that was the pain point of us missing revenue. But the videos that were posted on YouTube and that, even were shared over to me were all about that delegation process, how things move within the system and how to create that ecosystem between marketing to the setting engine to that closed engine. And that was where a lot of data was leaking, et cetera. So once I understood the mindset and the approach of it, your life cycles, the life stages, that side of HubSpot, and then obviously you flexed your reporting and your videos. I was like, all right, this guy gets it fully. He's been there. He sees the gap. And it's a very nuanced gap that only really happens when you're scaling. It doesn't happen when you have 5 to 10 clients a month paying you, 3 to 5 grand. It happens when you're doing 7 figures a month. When you're having massive growth and the systems are, even if they're bad, there's going to be a lot more growth if you get that tight. And a few percentage points goes a long way when you got a bigger team. So when I saw how that I was actually done with bigger sales team than what we currently have, I was like, all right, that makes sense, and that's what we're missing. So the first thing was that our audit was actually pretty quick. There wasn't really too much, which is a win overall because we were on the same frequency about things. It wasn't really a huge uncovering, which means that your organic marketing was working. You pulled in the right person explaining that issue. So self-diagnosing obviously helps a service integration no matter what. So that I would even consider a great engagement win. In addition, as a client, I laid out what my expectations were for service engagements and for service wins. I don't think enough people do that when there are other packaged up solutions like we'll run your ads or that kind of stuff, but there's never like an engagement win beforehand that everyone can agree on is the win. So if you're considering working with Aaron, that's a big thing. Like think about what your problem may be after they do the audit, so that way it just is way more efficient through the process. And so our audit was super smooth. And then with HubSpot being the sales team that they are, obviously we weren't given some of the key functionalities that we were seeing in some of the videos that you had, or the limitations to actually get from point A to point B. We were shooting in the dark, and so you were able to come in and say, "Oh, dude, here's all the other functionality. Oh, and by the way, we saved you 30% on your contract," which to us was about 30 grand, which is a big win right out the gate to be able to then go execute. So again, knowing what the engagement win is, you figuring out where the holes were and your team figuring out where the holes were, then created an easy roadmap for us to go execute on the actual scope of the project, which wrapped up within the timeline, actually earlier than the timeline. We're actually a few weeks, done ahead of time, and our team has adopted it within like a week or so, and everything's been smooth since. Experience wise, I think probably the commitment of Evan on the team. He hopped on multiple times when there was like either a mission critical automation glitch that wasn't populating properly, that was downstream affecting things. So the support post go live was very important. And obviously, whenever you go live with a new system, there's going to be bugs. You can't expect perfection, but the speed and the attentiveness, understanding the nuance of the issue is a huge win because any done for you service provider in this space may understand, hey, this automation's broken, but doesn't understand, again, like I mentioned, how does that impact sales process? How does that impact the report? How does that impact here? And so fixing it the right way instead of having to go back over and over and over and over. We never really had to do that. We never really had to go back and refix the same issue over and over and over, which demonstrates a great understanding post go live of what needed to be fixed or maybe what was missed or whatever the case is. The other win, I would say working with the team, was as soon as we did our audit, and then the project management was pretty on point when it comes to the timelines. So everything was provided ahead of time. Obviously, some phases go faster than others. So overall, we hit timelines. We went live when we said we went live. And also, even though I'm a bit more of an aggressive guy when it comes to, go, 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 push, push, get the marketing stuff out there, get it going, being able to say, hey, no, we can't go live just yet. Not because the systems weren't ready, but the support that is going to be needed. I tried launching a few days earlier just because of our marketing and how it essentially works. But Evan was like, no, man, let's make sure the team's fully on point there. So seeing things that I wouldn't be able to see is also a big win as well. Yeah, Evan was great. From a systems perspective, it's always just demonstrating the full understanding across different verticals. So marketing, sales, operations, finance, hiring, like understanding how those processes work and workflows work within HubSpot, a good understanding of how second, third, and fourth order implications go down with making a tweak, making a change, making that kind of stuff, and approaching it even from a different perspective because our team on my side is a lot more marketing focused. So we approach it from one perspective versus sales engine perspective, and so that has to marry up and get aligned at that junction and points. So I would say that the team, from a commitment standpoint, Evan was great to work with. Even him delegating to some of his other team members like Mitch, and I forgot there's a couple others that were underneath Evan. The delegation and then executions of the delegation. I'm sure, Mitch maybe isn't domestic or works close with Evan, but is somewhere remote. But that handoff wasn't bad either. And sometimes when you do have remote teams, the remote team messes around, doesn't understand the speed of which things need to be implicated on or executed on. So just the tempo is something that we experienced a lot of great success with the team overall. And even working with you, like, hey, we need this kind of solution. Think through it, take 1 or 2 days, 3 days, whatever to get through it, or a week, depending on your schedule, but not like actually solve the real problem, not just getting me a response because, time to response is key. It's like, let's just answer the question. I'm not needy. I don't need, the quick, thumbs up or whatever to just make sure that you saw it. So, but like just making sure that the question is answered or the thing that is actually done is done right the first time. So overall, that was team wide. It wasn't just one player. And then I'm sure there was a lot of back end conversations with other team members that I don't know about that contributed as I only interacted with maybe 1 or 2 people. But overall, it was a pretty smooth experience overall, and everyone was aligned. It wasn't showing up super one day super foggy to the whole situation. Like they were still locked into the project, which is key, especially if things take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. It can sometimes get hard to wrap your head around sticking to that same project through and through. So if you're looking for tactical execution, they'll help, within whatever realm and scope that you're looking for to be able to actually have experts do it faster than you figuring it out. So even on just that side alone, the tactical implementation side is phenomenal. But the intellectual property that Aaron has just from being able to run and manage multiple sales teams, he can see through what the system has to do and what the qualitative kind of side of the sales process has to do as well. So he can marry those two, and usually most people are just systems oriented or they're just sales oriented. There's not both, and that's what's missing really in our space heavily from a online marketing, online whatever space. So you won't find someone that understands the scale further, and you won't find a team that understands that scale further than Aaron and their team. So I highly recommend if you're trying to scale out your sales team and just make your life easier from a reporting standpoint and just have it be fun and easier, work with them because you can dig yourself a grave in HubSpot with them upcharging you like crazy and trying to figure out all the animations and really not knowing where you're going. Just work with the people that have been there and they can do it for you, do it faster.